The Resident Evil 4 remake is just around the corner, and owing to the original's reputation as one of the best games ever made, I decided to play it on stream fully blind. I have never played a Resident Evil game, nor am I very good with horror, so it was a journey. It began with a cutscene that was able to set the scene. I don't know anything about Resident Evil's story, so a little bit of context is great. We are on a mission to save the president's daughter. This brings us to the first thing I noticed, which was the controls. The game employs tank controls, an outdated movement system by modern standards. It refers to a player's inability to strafe. A and D move the camera left and right. It took some getting used to, but it genuinely fits with the game. The game's encounters and levels are designed for this system, so it never ends up feeling limiting. The red dot also took some getting used to as opposed to a typical crosshair or reticle. It never hindered my enjoyment, but I do think the game would benefit from using a more standard reticle. This game's gunplay feels fluid and weighty. Enemies are not bullet sponges, which helps the overall feel of the guns, as spongy enemies can make guns just feel anemic. Speaking of enemies, the game is brilliant at drip-feeding enemy variety, which adds to the game's immaculate pacing. The first initial enemies are the Ganados. They are standard zombie-like enemies that use a variety of weapons and can be taken down in a multitude of ways. This game is nearly 20 years old and still holds up mechanically. The player can stagger the enemy with a shot to the head, which can be followed up with a kick or suplex. A leg shot to a running enemy trips them up. Hand shots can make them drop their weapon, and all projectiles, apart from bullets, can be shot out of the sky. The number of strategies available makes the game feel fresh during every fight. A little background on me, I generally dislike PvE shooters. I have never before played a first or third person shooter in which AI are the enemies and enjoyed my time, despite knowing the games I have tried in this vast genre are objectively good games. RE4 is the first PvE shooter that I have enjoyed and continue to enjoy both on and off stream. I think it is because of the mechanical depth in the combat. PvE shooters, in my experience, very often come down to firing an AI that does not react meaningfully. This is why I really enjoy PvP shooters. Other human players are far more nuanced to fight than AI, and Resident Evil 4 is the first PvE shooter that has presented me with AI enemies that are far more than just overgrown target dummies. The introduction of the Chief and Luis Serra concludes Chapter 1. I love Luis. He is a very likable character that is immediately characterized by some fun banter with our main boy Leon. Luis jumped out at me owing to his overwhelming charisma in a game where the dialogue ranges from camp to cringe.
No thanks, bro.
I can't wait to see what happens with Luis and Leon's budding friendship in the future. What the fuck? No! Unfortunately, we don't get much time with Luis, but reading his journal entries throughout the game clues the player in on why he's doing what he's doing. A question both Leon and I had. What?
He's better with the ladies, I'm sure.
Why is he being so nice?
It makes me feel better.
Oh. Leon and I had the exact same question. He was a researcher who specialized in the parasites and is a very big proponent in the unleashing of the Plagas. With as small the pool of options as we have, Luis is definitely my favorite character in the story. Speaking of the Plagas, new enemy type. It took me until Chapter 5 to figure out that flash grenades insta-kill the parasite enemies, so throughout my game, I had about 11 flash grenades in my inventory that I never used until the very end. It's a very good mechanic, and I'm glad it is never explicitly explained to the player. Experimentation leading to great outcomes can be extremely satisfying mechanically, and it may change the player's strategy across multiple playthroughs, leading to greater replay value. A big proponent of replaying this game relates to the player's growing skill. Upon playing the game for the second time on professional difficulty, I now have a far greater idea of how to cleave through areas in the most efficient ways, and none of these were explicitly telegraphed. It was all learned throughout my initial 15-hour journey, and I will continue to learn more of the game's intricacies throughout my playthrough on professional difficulty. I think I forgot to mention Del Lago. The boat controls are kinda shit, and the fight is an infuriating mix of QTEs and a random spear throw turret section. There was an idea here, and it could be refined into a great fight in the remake, but as it stands in the OG, it just ain't it, chief. I love how the game uses the merchant and safe rooms as a reprieve from the suspense while traveling through the map. The merchant has iconic lines I've quoted for years, and I didn't know he was in this game until he said his lines. I understand why he became so iconic. His appearances are never explained, and I don't want them to be. He shows up, helps you, refuses to elaborate, and leaves. He has a small air of mystery, especially seeing as, I think, he has Ganado eyes, right? A player cannot maintain a constant state of fear and suspense. Safe rooms and merchant areas are a fantastic way to bring the player to a lower state of stress and fear, so that those feelings can be built back up afterwards in the combat areas. On to the first real boss. By the logic of the achievements anyway, El Gigante. So anyway, Steve here is a big ogre that appears in a few areas, and this is his first appearance. The dog that the player chose to save helps out as well. I have named him Sif, and he is our doggo now. Can we talk about the puzzles? They aren't the hardest puzzles, but they have a few dimensions to them at times. The green cat's eye puzzle is the first proper puzzle, and is probably one of, if not the best puzzle in the game. It is very easy for a game to create boring puzzles that lose the title of puzzle once you inspect their mechanics, after which you can simply just call them tasks, and RE4 sometimes succeeds in creating proper puzzles, but sometimes it just doesn't. The rescuing of Ashley constitutes a big milestone for the player. We have found the girl and it's time for an escort mission. Based on what was established going in blind, I thought saving Ashley was going to be the end of the game. To this end, I thought the Del Lago area was halfway through. Oh boy, was I mistaken. This is probably the best escort mission I have ever played. Escort missions in games can be some of the most annoying owing to NPCs that don't walk at the player's speed, get in the player's way, and don't shut the fuck up. She only has one of these three issues. Okay, Ashley, shut up, please. Oh, there's handgun ammo. Ashley! You are so annoying. Ashley can be told to stop and follow with a single button press. She always walks at Leon's speed and ducks when he aims. Ashley adds another tense variable to gameplay. Her inclusion is a strict improvement. It is an even bigger improvement because she's not always with Leon after that point. Her getting captured, although sometimes silly story-wise, allows the player breathing room for which they can take a break from babysitting her. What I'm trying to say is that the game balances the escort gameplay to solo gameplay ratio extremely well. Once again, this adds a point to the game's immaculate pacing. Once we have her, it is time to complete the village section. We do the fantastic house defense section with Luis, who drops incredible riz.
Well, I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics too.
How rude!
We take the lift and fight the village chief. I figured out his weakness immediately. This game uses a player's intuition very well. The cutscene showed the chief becoming angry and going bug mode when Leon shot an exploding barrel. So to begin this fight, I threw an incendiary immediately. The chief is now half the man he used to be. Another incendiary finished the job. I'm not sure how I feel about this fight overall. I don't think I have anything nuanced to say about it because he just fucking died. Oh right, I forgot to mention, Rayloff of Riverwood is the main antagonist of this game.
But before that, I thought I might bargain with the president for some donation. Believe it or not, it takes quite a lot of money to keep this church up and running. Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Now leaving the village, we get to the next massive section, the castle. I generally dislike the opening castle area because getting one-shot by a catapult isn't too engaging. I do like the enemies in the area though. They add another layer to the enemies seen in the village. They carry different weapons, some have helmets and some have shields. RE4 allows you to play through the village for a few hours until the player becomes well versed in fighting Ganados before throwing you into an area with new enemies that have far greater variety than those in the village. While boring is a subjective term, it is very easy to replace the word boring with the word repetitive, which is more quantifiable. Repetitive Repetitiveness in encounters and enemies in Resident Evil 4 is almost non-existent during a first playthrough. Did I mention that RE4 had immaculate pacing yet? There are always new situations, enemy types, area types, and challenges, and is exemplified by the adaptive difficulty on normal mode. Adaptive difficulty is a very contentious topic, as it is very useful to players who do not want to get stuck dying over and over, but is disliked by players who prefer a consistent experience and challenge. Resident Evil 4 manages this well by removing adaptive difficulty in its hardest mode, professional difficulty. Normal mode adapts enemy count, aggressiveness, damage, and health based on how well the player is doing. This adds to the lack of repetitiveness, as adaptive difficulty is great for reducing a player's chance to get stuck while keeping a skilled player on their toes at all times. The castle is huge. The first major challenge was the catapults, but the true first enemy is the wandering blind man. This game is pretty ableist. You take advantage of the blind. I didn't steal that joke from chat. The fuck are you talking about? The Ashley balcony fight created some funny moments for me in my stream. Fuck me. Fuck you guys. Oh my god. I did it again! I didn't even shoot her! No. Come on! It is a very good section, changing up the variables of combat to add challenge to the fight. Unfortunately, pretty soon after, she gets captured by a wall. This is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in a game. I appreciate the break from the escort mechanics, but Jesus Christ, that was stupid!
You alright?
I'm fine. Leave me alone.
Ashley, wait!
Why did she do that? You're a fucking idiot. What the fuck? What? The story doesn't hold up during analysis, I know. This game is not like a lot of modern games. It is very mechanically focused. The story in RE4 is set dressing, so I'm not going to be too harsh on it, but holy fuck. Next up, we fight invisible bug enemies while Ashley is captured. And I think now is a good time to discuss weapon variety. Weapons in this game come in 5 distinct types. There are pistols, shotguns, rifles, magnums, and an SMG. Yes, I know there is a mine shooter, but it isn't a standard weapon, so there's no point in including it in this analysis, okay? All gun types feel distinct to fire, with a multitude of reload animations, sounds, levels of power, and more. Criticism can be sprinkled in on the mechanics where it is valid, and in the case of weapons, there is one major criticism that comes down to the individual weapons in each type not being very distinct. There is generally one weapon in each type that is categorically the best, and so there is no reason to make a choice on a gun in each type. You just pick the best one. The basic shotgun is beaten by the riot gun, which is outclassed by the striker. Weapons of each type should have pros and cons. By choosing the semi-auto rifle over the bolt action, the player should perhaps sacrifice damage for the lack of needing to cock the semi-auto. This is probably the biggest criticism of the game's mechanics, and despite that, it's not really a make or break flaw. It's more of a nitpick. Coming up, we have a maze. We meet Ada and the dog enemies can suck my dick. After which, we defend Ashley again and then play as her for the first and only moment in the entire game. I've heard that people are hypercritical of this section, but seeing as it appears at about the midway point of the game, it allows a quick break from the typical gunplay mechanics in favor of a more stealthy horror gameplay style. I didn't find it to be unsatisfying, nor did it really last that long. It allowed something a little different for 5-10 minutes after hours of Leon gun combat. Speaking of combat, this room exemplifies what Resident Evil 4 is able to accomplish with its mechanics. This room is full of a multitude of enemy types, 2 of which are the wandering blind men. This room can be tackled in a large variety of ways that test the player's ability to defeat enemies, and they all require different means of execution. The player's brain needs to be on for the entire duration of the encounter, and it is magnificent. And next up is hands down the scariest part of the game. For me at least. Horror is different for everyone after all. Everyone is scared of different things. The right hand of Salazar scared the ever-living shit out of me. Oh no! Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. I'm terrible with horror, and I'm scared shitless to redo this fight in the remake. Luckily, if you want to see me shitting myself live, you can watch me play the RE4 remake right here on my YouTube channel, once it's out of course. If you cannot make it to the live stream, the VODs will remain up on my YouTube channel in the live section. Which reminds me, if you want to watch my full blind playthrough of the original Resident Evil 4, the VODs are up on the live section of my channel. Unfortunately, due to a massive heart rate spike and my aversion to horror, the right hand of Salazar left me in a sour mood throughout the next section. I was running very low on resources and ended up having a bad impression of the mine section. Looking back at it, I see that I can't objectively fault it. I look back at it now with fondness. I look back at the entire game fondly, in fact. It has very quickly shot up my rankings of favorite games of all time. But speaking of resources, the mines section may be a good time to discuss another aspect of the game, the survival elements in this survival horror game. The survival elements refer to the player having limited resources that need to be micromanaged throughout their playthrough. Ammo, healing items, and consumables are all items that need to be managed and used intelligently. It is possible to run out of ammo completely, although unlikely, especially with the mechanics the game implements to aid the player in not becoming soft-locked. Ammo, money, heals, and consumables can be found throughout the world along with being enemy drops. The game increases the chances for enemies to drop ammo types the player is running low on. This mechanic helps the player to not become soft-locked or infuriated with the random drops. All items can also be sold, with many veterans of this game opting to sell certain strong healing items or weapons early game for a quick power boost in the easier areas. This item system has a lot of nuances and intricacies that I can't wait to experiment more with as my playtime increases. The mine and castle areas cap off with a fight against Salazar, which I do believe I did pretty well in. I only got hit by the parasites at the bottom of the arena due to thinking I had to jump down to deal damage at one point. I think this may be my favorite boss fight in the game, just owing to the lack of gimmicks this boss uses in comparison to the other boss fights in the game. On to the final area, the island. Many see this area as boring and uninspired. I think it may be my second favorite area though. The village is my favorite and the castle is my least favorite. I know what I just said was a hot take, but I genuinely really like the island. The island is a military base. Enemy Ganados have upgraded from garden instruments and medieval weapons to military grade protection and weaponry. This area adds another layer to the challenge, along with the most foreboding enemies in the entire game. Regenerators are incredible enemies. They are extraordinarily creepy in their visuals and their sound effects. The remake may give me a heart attack and kill me when these guys appear. It's a little bit unfortunate that their weakness is very gimmicky. This is also where I can sprinkle in a tiny bit of criticism. They require a special rifle scope to be defeated easily. It is possible to defeat them without it, but the difficulty and required resources make it near impossible. The game presents the player later on with a regenerator they are required to defeat to progress, as it has a key to Ashley's cell. When I arrived, despite searching the area that had the scope, I didn't find it, so I had to backtrack and ask chat for help. The scope gets given to you in a freezer room and the door locks, forcing you to use the scope to kill a regenerator before allowing the player to progress. An easy fix to avoid players missing this incredibly critical item is to lock the freezer room when the player enters, not when they unfreeze the scope. That way they are guaranteed to have this very, very important item. Krauser's QTE fight, thank God, is being changed in the remake. I'm very excited for the remake's knife fight, to be honest. Krauser is a fun enemy when you fight him in his actual arena, and it took me quite a few tries to understand how to defeat him, but in the end, it was very satisfying. You shoot him in the ankles. R.I.P. Wait, what was his name? R.I.P. Mike. Gone, but not forgotten. Now the game is coming to a close. We rescue Ashley, remove the parasite, and rail off of Riverwood goes sicko mode. The final boss fight is pretty satisfying. It sees the player shooting his weak spots when they open up, until Ada eventually gives the player the means to end Raloph's life. The game ends with a jet ski section for some reason, and Ashley makes her move.
So, after you take me back to my place, how about we do some, overtime?
Leon declines and makes his move on a co-worker.
Thanks. You know you're kinda cute without those glasses. Give me your number when I get back.
May I remind you that you're still on duty?
Story of my life.
R.I.P. Luis. Leon could never match his Riz.
Ballistics.
And that's Resident Evil 4. The game is incredible, and I can't wait to play the remake. We're very close to release day. Among my favorite games of all time, Skyrim, Persona 5, Dark Souls 1, and now RE4. RE4, Persona 5, and Skyrim are all fighting for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place. I haven't settled on a decision where they all go yet, but I do know that Dark Souls 1 was not dethroned as my favorite of all time. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and follow me on Twitter. If you're so inclined, please subscribe to my Patreon. You can support me from as little as £1 a month. Each donation truly helps towards turning this whole YouTube thing from my hobby into my profession. Thank you again. Bye-bye.